The studio lights gleamed like diamonds, reflecting off the glossy floor of Sherry, as cameras rolled and the live audience buzzed with excitement. The set was warm, the energy electric, the kind of afternoon talk show moment where laughter and charm flowed easily. Jeannie Mai, radiant in a sleek white suit that shimmered under the lights, smiled and waved to the cheering crowd. She was there to promote her new lifestyle project, something about healing, motherhood, and rediscovering purpose, topics that usually drew love and admiration from fans. Sherry Shepherd, ever the seasoned host, greeted her guest with enthusiasm. "Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Jeannie Mai." The audience erupted again. The two women hugged as Jeannie took her seat. It started as a friendly reunion, two women of color who'd worked their way up in Hollywood, now laughing and sharing stories before millions. "You look absolutely stunning," Sherry said, grinning. "There's a glow happening, and I'm not talking about the highlighter." Jeannie laughed lightly, smoothing her hair. "Thank you, Sherry. I think it's peace. You know, real peace feels better than any makeup ever could." The audience cheered, sensing her honesty. For a moment, it was exactly what the producers had envisioned: genuine, uplifting, relatable television. But Sherry, known for her playful but probing style, leaned forward. "Speaking of peace," she said with a teasing lilt, "you've been through a lot these past months. Everyone's been talking about your separation from Jeezy." The room's energy subtly shifted. The audience quieted. Jeannie's smile froze for half a second before she composed herself. "I've shared what I wanted to about that chapter," Jeannie said calmly. "I'm focused on my daughter and on healing. That's where my energy is right now." Sherry nodded, but her tone carried a mischievous edge. "Totally understand, but you know people are curious, right? You built a whole brand on being open, the real, unfiltered Jeannie. So, are we getting the real story today?" Laughter trickled from the audience, unsure whether it was safe to laugh. Jeannie gave a tight smile, but her eyes had cooled. "Sherry, I think there's a difference between being open and being dissected." Sherry raised her brows, still smiling. "Oh, come on, girl, you know I'm just asking what everyone's thinking. I mean, people saw the unfollows, the quotes, the headlines, it looked messy." That word, messy, seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Jeannie's body language changed subtly. Her posture stiffened, and she crossed one leg over the other, folding her hands in her lap. "Life happens, but not everything needs to be explained in public. Some things are sacred." The audience murmured, caught between fascination and discomfort. A few clapped, sensing her composure. Sherry, perhaps realizing she'd touched a nerve, tried to play it off with humor. Okay, sacred. I get it, but you know me, I have to ask, it's my job." Jeannie's response came gently but firmly. "And it's my job to protect my peace." The words landed heavy, almost echoing. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of studio equipment. Sherry blinked, surprised by the chill that had settled in. She tried to pivot. "Let's talk about your daughter. She's adorable, by the way. How's motherhood treating you?" Jeannie relaxed just slightly. "She's my world," she said softly. "Everything I do now is about being the best version of myself for her." But the reprieve didn't last. Sherry, driven by the instinct to stir emotion, added with a chuckle, "And does that include forgiving Jeezy?" That did it. The laughter died instantly. Jeannie's jaw clenched, and the warmth drained from her face. She leaned forward, voice steady but laced with steel. "Sherry, I didn't come here to talk about that man. I came here to talk about me." The audience gasped. Sherry's expression faltered. She hadn't expected the line to be drawn so clearly. "I wasn't trying to offend." "I know you weren't," Jeannie interrupted, her tone soft but unyielding. "But this kind of conversation is exactly why women hesitate to share their truth. Because even when we do, it gets turned into entertainment." A stunned silence filled the studio. The crew exchanged glances. The tension was undeniable now, thick enough to feel. Sherry tried to laugh it off, her voice slightly strained. "Girl, it's all love here. You know me." Jeannie gave a small, weary smile. "I do, Sherry, which is why I think I'm done here." The words hit like a slap of cold water. The audience gasped as Jeannie calmly removed her mic. "Wait, Jeannie, come on, sit down." Sherry half laughed, half pleaded, but Jeannie stood up, smoothing her suit jacket with practiced grace. "I appreciate the invitation," she said evenly, looking directly at Sherry, "but I won't let my pain become a punchline." With that, she turned and walked off, heels clicking in sharp rhythm against the studio floor. The cameras followed her just long enough to capture the moment before cutting to Sherry's stunned face. The audience didn't know whether to clap, gasp, or stay silent. Finally, the music for commercial break blared through the speakers. Sherry sat frozen, forcing a small, strained smile. But the image of Jeannie Mai walking off the Sherry stage, calm, unbroken, and unapologetic, was already making its way across the internet, about to set the world buzzing. Backstage erupted into chaos the moment Jeannie Mai disappeared from the set. Producers scrambled through headsets, whispering urgent instructions, while assistants dashed between dressing rooms trying to contain the fallout. The tension that had filled the stage moments ago now echoed behind the scenes like a drumbeat. Jeannie stood near the corridor exit, her breath steady but her hands trembling slightly as she removed her microphone pack. The red, on-air, lights still glowed faintly from the studio door behind her, but she was already done, not just with the interview, but with the idea of being anyone's public spectacle. Her publicist, Camille, rushed over, face flushed and phone already buzzing. "Jeannie, we can fix this," she said quickly, voice low but panicked. "If you go back on for the closing segment, smile, crack a joke, it'll look like a playful moment. It'll save both you and the show." Jeannie met her eyes calmly. "Camille, I meant what I said. I'm not walking back out there to make nice for optics. I've done that too many times before." Camille sighed, torn between loyalty and damage control. "I just don't want this to turn into a narrative you can't control." Jeannie gave a small, tired smile. "The only narrative I can control is my truth. And my truth is, I'm done being cornered." Inside the studio, Sherry was trying to patch together what was left of the segment. The audience was still murmuring, glancing at each other in disbelief. When the show returned from commercial break, Sherry put on a brave smile. "Well, you guys, live TV. Things can get a little spicy sometimes." The crowd laughed awkwardly. Sherry continued, "I want to send love to Jeannie Mai. She's an incredible woman, and sometimes conversations just get a little passionate." The laughter was polite, but thin. The tension still clung to the air. Even as Sherry moved on to her next guest, her smile never quite reached her eyes. Meanwhile, Jeannie sat in her dressing room, the muffled sound of the show continuing in the distance. She leaned back in the chair, exhaling deeply. Her phone buzzed relentlessly on the vanity. Texts, missed calls, social media notifications, it was already happening. The clip of her walking off had hit the internet within minutes, recorded by someone in the audience and shared online before the commercial break even ended. Camille returned, phone in hand. "It's blowing up," she said flatly. "TMZ, Entertainment Tonight, every blog, they've got the footage. Hashtag Jeannie Mai walks off is trending already." Jeannie took a sip of water, her expression unreadable. "What are they saying?" "Mixed," Camille admitted. "Some people are calling you dramatic. But most are applauding you for setting boundaries. You've got a wave of support building." Jeannie nodded slowly. "Good, maybe this time, the world will understand that silence doesn't mean weakness." Her phone buzzed again. She picked it up and saw messages flooding in, friends, fans, even old colleagues. Lonnie Love had texted, "You did right, sis. Proud of you." Adrian Balin wrote, "You handled that with grace. They'll twist it, but we see you." But one message from a network executive stung more than the rest. "Jeannie, walking off mid-show sends the wrong message. Future bookings might hesitate." Jeannie stared at the words for a long moment before typing back, "If being respected costs me appearances, I'm fine with that." By the time she left the studio, paparazzi were already gathering near the exit. Flashes went off as she walked briskly to her car, face composed, not a single word to the cameras. The next morning, the story dominated entertainment news cycles. Jeannie Mai walks off live TV after tense interview with Sherry Shepherd. Some outlets painted her as overly sensitive, but others hailed her as a symbol of quiet power. And then Jeannie posted on Instagram a simple black and white photo of her walking away from the Sherry stage, her back turned, captioned only, "Boundaries are not walls. They're doors to peace. Protect yours." Within hours, the post exploded. Celebrities and fans flooded the comments. Kelly Rowland, Taraji P. Henson, and even Oprah left hearts and words of encouragement. Fans began posting their own stories about walking away from toxic situations, using the hashtag boundaries are beautiful. Meanwhile, Sherry's team worked overtime to do damage control. A public statement went out the next afternoon. Sherry Shepherd has the utmost respect for Jeannie Mai. The discussion became more personal than intended, and Sherry regrets any discomfort caused. During her next episode, Sherry briefly addressed the incident. "Jeannie's a beautiful soul," she said sincerely. "Sometimes conversations go places we don't plan. I wish her peace and love, truly." The audience applauded, but even Sherry seemed humbled, her usual bright tone replaced by a hint of reflection. For Jeannie, though, the experience became more than just a viral moment. It marked a shift, a reclaiming of control. She spent the following weeks turning down interview requests and avoiding the spotlight, choosing instead to focus on her daughter and her work. Offers came pouring in from brands and platforms praising her authenticity, but she was selective. When she finally spoke again, it wasn't on TV. It was through a heartfelt podcast episode titled, "The Power of No." In it, she said quietly, "I walked off that stage because I realized I didn't owe the world every piece of my pain. For so long, I believed that being transparent meant being exposed. But it doesn't. You can be open and still private. You can share and still protect yourself. And you can walk away, not out of anger, but out of self-respect." Her voice trembled slightly near the end. "That day, I didn't storm out. I walked out, and that's a difference I'll never apologize for." By then, the world had already moved on to its next viral moment. But for Jeannie Mai, that day on Sherry was more than TV drama. It was liberation, broadcast live for everyone to see. She hadn't just walked off a set. She'd walked into her peace.